All right, y'all. This is the last backlog episode we've got, unless you're watching this in order. But this episode is probably one of the biggest deviations from the manga. Not necessarily in a bad way, because there's a lot of stuff that the anime did here that was absolutely phenomenal. But we need to compare these two because there are some huge differences, and I'm sure there are some that I'll even forget to mention because there are just so absolutely many. But basically, where we left off, it was just the moment where Sion and Will basically get into their fight. And Sion just is like, come at me. We got this. And Will's like, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. And Colette tries to break them apart. Now, what's interesting here is the whole thing with Colette actually doesn't happen till like almost the middle of the episode. So this whole section here, we basically just forget about for the longest. So later on in the episode, that's when we find that, you know, Colette has kind of been separated from the other two, and she's facing off against Julius more or less. And then, you know, her and Julius kind of actually have their face off screen. The rest of this is just Will and Sion just dealing with their stuff. So the whole Colette Julius thing just really only happens more or less as a passing note. Most everything here is about this battle. So right about the time we get here, this is where we get our intro. Now, immediately after the intro, we get a whole bunch, in the episode at least, a whole bunch of exposition about, you know, the past and what Sion was like and what Will was like and how their childhood was like and, you know, how things Sion would do that would, you know, make Will feel basically, for lack of a better way to put it, emasculated. And then you get a whole bunch of the crowd. You find out now that there's all these scouts in the crowd. You have a little bit of dialogue from the scouts, like, where are these two fighting? There's just so much that happens. In fact, this is another moment where they kind of allude to that underground betting arena where the announcer kind of has the little dollar signs on his eyes. And that never happens here. In fact, we get like one, maybe two, like, cells of that announcer, and that's kind of about it. Most everything, with rare exception, most everything that you see that is either side characters having conversations or is, you know, the announcer and Edward, or anything that really happens inside the arena, for the most part, is all, I won't call it filler, because filler kind of implies that it's not important. It's exposition. It's additional exposition that the manga never gives you. Now, knowing how Omori works and all that, I would imagine that a lot of this was stuff that he intended to put in here, they just never wound up doing, or maybe stuff he decided to retcon between the manga and the anime. Doesn't matter. Either way, none of this feels like filler in the traditional sense. Anybody who's watched, like, old anime, you know, like Dragon Ball, Naruto, original One Piece, and all that kind of stuff, you know what I'm talking about. Those, like, episodes that make no sense. Like, why are Goku and Piccolo trying to get a driver's license? I don't understand. Why is One Piece doing this tie into a movie that literally can't fit in the timeline? Well, it just doesn't make any sense at all. But this does not feel like filler in that respect. This all actually worked as respectable exposition and explanation for how things were going down. So I cannot fault Omori or the animation studio or anyone for this. It's just something that, honestly, I had not read the manga by the time we watched this episode, and this episode did not feel out of place. All of that felt like it fit, and all of it felt like it had a purpose. But then we kind of pick back up with Will and Sion having their fight, and we haven't quite gotten to Colette and Julius, even though they kind of are in this cell. Now, we get a bit more out of Will and Sion's fight, and there are moments in this fight, a lot of moments in this fight, that simply aren't in the manga. And a lot of it is just raw action. It's showing how intense that they're battling and things like that. And it's stuff that really doesn't translate too well to the pages of the manga. So, while would I call it filler? Hell no. It was just action for the sake of building more action into the series. Because this really takes place over like 1.25 chapters. It's like the tail end of chapter 7 and all of chapter 8. Now, this is about the time that we do get Colette and Julius facing off. And there's not a lot more than what you see here. Like, obviously we saw where Colette was cut off from them and Julius is kind of, being a sinister weirdo. And she mentions, oh, he's setting off the traps. And, basically we just get a little bit of their activity. This is about the only thing in the arena that actually goes down kind of as you see it. There's the announcer dude is just talking about, everyone's on the move, what else is going on, blah, 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 and making note of the fact that infighting among teams is very deplorable and it's going to be looked down upon. And of course, Edward's like, yes, it's terrible. Oh, it is the worst. Don't show me, give me that. Don't show me anymore. Oh yeah. Like, this is, something that starts with a P and rhymes with horn for my guy here. He's having an issue. But there's just kind of a couple students that say something here. But actually, in the anime, there's a lot of back and forth between different entities here. And there's actually a scene where we see Rusty with Kiki, and I can't remember her name, but the old girl with the braided pigtails actually shows up. And they have several minutes worth of dialogue that just comes... I mean, it's good stuff. It makes sense. It's the first time we hear Rusty actually admit that he's interested in Will beyond, whatever level. Now, we don't find out what that really means for another few episodes, but yeah. Rusty was not talking about friendship there. Now, more Colette and Julius, she just kind of like, what's up? What's going on? And then we actually get the back and forth between, the Julius clones and Wignall here. And he's just like, not bad. That's a total thing. And this actually is one of the rare things that kind of felt weird and out of place. But now that we know more about the long run of the event, we know more about why Wignall is getting so much shine here. But then there's like a little bit more from the arena and more back and forth, and then finally we get into what I would call like the climax of the episode, where we finally have Will and Sion facing off. And it's like, now what? How many pages into the chapter are we? It's like, so we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 pages into the chapter. So like the midsection of the chapter versus like the last 10 minutes of the episode, which I guess is pretty close. But nevertheless, like, there's so much exposition, so much other stuff. And this is where he kind of calls down the big flame hawk. And from this point, pretty much going forward, it is more or less the same. With the exception, I think they do some flashbacks here where they kind of show the childhood again. That really never happens. We never get the childhood aspect of this out of the manga. It's not something that occurs. It was completely for the anime. Was good stuff, and I appreciate all of that history between them, but it's never happens here. But the fight with the Falcon goes down exactly as it does in the anime. There's no real changes. There's not much to discuss. They have their little back and forth. In fact, there's some of these scenes that take place over mere seconds, and it's like 2-3 pages where they're just screaming at each other, and Sion's begging for attention, and Will's like, no, I hate you, but I don't want to fight you. That's not what I'm here for. So, needless to say, Will does eventually overpower the Falcon, takes it out, and then they have this huge back and forth where Colette actually gets in the center, and her outfit is just blown asunder. And of course, it's kind of funny because Sion's like, "Where have you been?" And she's like, "Bro, I just defeated Julius off screen, and he just, like, villained on me. He just went, now you see me, now you don't." And so she's just trying to be like the cooler head that prevails here. But nevertheless, after all is said and done, Will just kind of gives her a coat like you see in the anime. In fact, I love the fact this shot is perfectly represented there. And then Will takes off, and Sion's like, "Well, what about me?" And he's like, "Yeah, we'll do it later. We'll do it later." Now, this is the next, and I harped on this so bad when I covered episode 7, but it is true. In the anime, Will has this insane grand entrance where he literally flies over half the arena and then just kind of does like a superhero landing. Here he just kind of steps in. So a lot of this episode is very highly embellished. It's the only episode really in the series where we see this level of embellishment. But if I'm totally honest here, it worked. The episode was great. The manga was great. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, even if it is not necessarily in the original manga, that doesn't mean that it wasn't Omori's intent from the start. That doesn't mean that it's not as good. It just means that it's different. And if I'm totally honest, I do love the episode. It's one of my favorite episodes of the series. And it's really funny because it's so different. But there you guys go. That is episode 6. We are now caught up. If you're watching this in order, watch episode 7 next. Episode 12 literally comes out for those of you guys watching it opening night, or the night that I upload this. Episode 12 comes out tomorrow. So I'll see you guys there. The finale of the series. And then we pick up with Danmachi Season 5 in just like a week or two. So make sure you guys stay put. Make sure you guys subscribe. And I'll be back with more coming up here really soon.